Tell me about that incident.
It was one afternoon in April 1964, 63, I believe it was.
During the demonstrations?
Yes, it was during the demonstrations.
Yes, 1963.
Right. I was going out to Holy Family Hospital. My oldest daughter had just been born, and at the time they did not have televisions in the room, so I was taking a small television to my wife, and in the process I saw one of my students in the back of a car that was driven by a white guy, and his companion was white as well. So they stopped at a telephone booth and they were calling the police, but I didn't know that at the time. I asked what was going on, and they told me they had one of my students. I told them he was my student. They said he was caught till tapping at one of the five and dime stores in Inslee.
And what is till tapping?
Till tapping is when the cashier leaves a drawer open to the cash register, and the person catches that person not on guard and puts his hand into the cash register and takes money. Just so happens that he ran. And they were about to make a citizen's arrest, as they explained it to me. So I said, since neither of you are policemen, would you let the kid get out of the car? And they were reluctant to do so, so I pushed the seat up to the dashboard so that the guy could get out of the back seat. And he ran. That's what got everything started. So when the police did come, they had gotten instructions. Well, the sergeant who came said he had been instructed by Bull Connor to take me to jail because he was going to teach me a lesson, letting me know that teachers were not supposed to be a part of the civil rights movement, especially when it came to demonstrations. And
so he was teaching you a lesson for all of the other teachers?
Yes, yes. They said I should have known better. My intelligence should have told me to stay out of it, not have anything to do with it.
Now, you were arrested. How long were you in jail?
No, I was incarcerated for just a number of hours. I say about 5 or 6 hours when they let me out on my recognizance. Then I had to go to court after that. And in the process, I did not win out in the trial because they said they charged me with inciting to riot, even though the guy said I used no profanity, no blows were struck, or anything along those lines.
Tell me about the courtroom scene. What was that like? Was it a jury trial? Or?
It was not a jury trial. It was a decision of the judge. Didn't have a jury at that time.
And did you testify for your,
I think I did answer a few questions, not like the testimony that we find being given today.
I see. And what were some of the questions that were asked of you?
They asked what was I doing in the area, and I told them that I was out to see my wife and take her television in the hospital where she was with our newborn child. I told them I was really trying to find out what was happening to a student of mine, and I didn't aid in his getaway, didn't know exactly whether or not he was guilty or not guilty, but he ran. So there was nothing I could do in the line of catching him, and not there to start a riot.
Were the police asked questions as well?
I don't recall exactly.
Were you found innocent or guilty of inciting to riot?
Yeah, I was found guilty.
And what did that mean?
That meant the superintendent of education was informed to instruct me to resign or be fired. So I had to turn in a letter of resignation so that it wouldn't be on my record that I was fired from the Birmingham City school system.
Now, you were a family man at the time. You had a newborn child, a wife and family. How then
and a son who was 10 years of age at that time.
Oh, and a son. So you had 2 children at the
yes.
time. So how then did you manage to take care of your children,
your
family?
All of the black principals rallied to the cause there, whereby they took up enough money from their instructors that kept me from being homeless. I took care of my house note and bought groceries and the bills that I had to pay. I didn't have any problems with that because of the money that they had taken up from the teachers who were concerned about what had happened to me.
And how long did that go on?
It went on from April until I left in August and took a job in Michigan.
So as a result of your encounter with the police, you had to leave Birmingham to go to Michigan.
If I wanted to stay in the profession that I was involved with at the time. So I went to Detroit seeking a job there because I had a sister-in-law who lived there. And I was offered a job at Highland Park Junior College. But it so happens that they were paying more money in Flint, Michigan, so I went to Flint Southwestern, where I got a job as an English teacher and a debate coach.
This is Southwestern High School?
Yes, high school.
Prior to going to Michigan, did you ever participate in any of the activities that were going on in Birmingham?
Yes, I would. I would go to some of the mass meetings that they were having, and any meeting whereby we found that some of our people were involved in the civil rights movement and they needed some support in a manner that would not cause anyone to have to suffer because of being involved.
Can you describe to me what a mass meeting was like?
It was like a church rally, so to speak, where everyone would listen to the main speaker and talking about what, it was something to get people all pepped up as to what we were all about and trying to get seats at the lunch counters and this kind of thing and letting them know what the movement was all about and to remain nonviolent in whatever their endeavors might be as far as following the instructions and the dictates of Martin Luther King and those who were heading the Southern Christian Leadership Conference along with the Alabama Christian Movement.
Right. Did you participate in demonstrations? Did you march?
Yes, I did.
Tell me just describe what it was like being a part of the demonstration.
It was a great feeling that came over, knowing that you were doing something to possibly help those who had to come behind you and those who were not getting involved because somebody would reap the benefits of my involvement, I felt. And that's why I even took part of the march from Selma to Montgomery. And it was raining after we got there and had to set up tents, this kind of thing that I remember most vividly because of the impact and that it had on me and my life, so to speak.
The demonstration that you took part in 1963, was that after you had resigned from your position as teacher at Council School?
Yes, yes.
And did the example that was being set by using you, did that have an impact upon other individuals that you knew who were teachers?
I think it did to some degree. They did not get involved to the extent that I became involved, but they were supporters of those who did become involved, and they were relaying the message as to what it was all about as far as the movement was concerned and what some of the benefits might be if we kept the fight going in a non-violent manner.
If you had the opportunity, would you change anything that took place during that particular period of your life?
If I had the opportunity, would I do so now?
Would you do the same thing, or would you not participate?
I would participate, yes, I would. Because I think there's a way that one can go about it without having to be afraid of what might happen to him. At the time, I didn't even think about my job being taken away from me or being pushed to the point where I had to give it up. I was thinking of the end result and what the movement was all about. And that's what I would do if I had the opportunity to do so again. Because we need the great awakening and letting everybody know what we should be about and some of the things we should do for ourselves instead of waiting for somebody else to do it for us.
When you left Birmingham and went to Michigan, how long were you there?
I was in Michigan from 63 until 70.
And you returned to Birmingham at that time?
Yes, I returned to Birmingham to live in 70, but I came back during the year 69. That's when I applied for a job at WBRC. At the time, we had no black news reporters or black announcers at what we call, quote, white radio stations. It was in December when I applied at the urgence of the NAACP. And I was told that they had no openings. They didn't look forward to having any in the near future. So I said, well, thank you very much. And I still have that letter where they wrote me in January saying that they did find that there was an opening at WBRC, which is now ERC Radio, and asked me if I would reconsider. So I did and came back in February 1970 and took the job there as a news reporter.
What was that like, being the first black news reporter?
It was like being what we call the token. The only other black face was the custodian. And we had a news team of 3 men. I was the only black. And to showcase the fact that they had a black, I was given a news car which was white, and there was the black guy driving it, making city council meetings and covering county commission meetings, fires, fights, or what have you.
And
it was quite an experience because I had the opportunity to be showcased again to the Birmingham Rotary Club, or the Kiwanis, one of the two, where I was the main speaker. And there I was, the only black, speaking to this massive white audience. And it was something to behold because I had no idea that I would be chosen for something like that, but I was glad to serve in that capacity, hoping that maybe I could serve as an example and help somebody else to have as much get up and go about themselves as I had and go ahead and reach such heights.
What was your relationship then with other black radio personalities of the time who were on black radio stations, because you at that particular point was the only one that was on a white radio station?
The relationship, I believe, was about the same, because I started out in radio per se in 1953 at WJLD, and I was remembered from that, and having been a musician working around the city with an orchestra, I stayed in close contact with most of the guys, and I knew them personally. So it was something that they were telling me that they were glad to see me move into, possibly opening a door for someone else, because there was only one other at the time, along with myself. He was hired in '69 and I was hired in '70.
Were there any racial encounters that you remembered in those first days that you worked with WBRC?
No, I don't recall that I had any. The only one was with Shelton down in Tuscaloosa when we had a news conference, and I was assigned to go and cover it.
And Shelton is?
It was the czar with the Klan. And he told Davenport Smith, who was our news director, whatever you do, don't send that nigger down here. Because the word had gotten out that they had a black news reporter. Everything else worked out smoothly because I had been seen enough times for them to know that I was a native of Birmingham, and I didn't have any trouble out of anyone.
What was the encounter like with Shelton?
I didn't get a chance to go down.
You didn't go?
No, they wouldn't send me.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been quite an experience.
Yes, yes.
But I did have the opportunity to do some interviews with Don Black, who's also with a Klan. He's no longer in the city, but I covered some of his rallies out at the Brighton area. And all the blacks out there who saw me, they were wondering why I was getting so close to this guy doing an interview, but I had had him on my talk show. At that time we had talk shows, but I would record them early and play them back on Sunday. So that was quite an experience, and I kept it going. And I think I had his respect. And the other guy from Louisiana, I can't think of his name, he was a big Klansman as well.
Right.
So I did have a chance to get in on the inside of some of the things that were going on and find out about their philosophy and way of life.
Yeah. How did those initial contacts work with you? I mean, when you were initially introduced to them, how did you make the contacts, and how receptive were they of a black man coming to interview them?
Well, I think they were quite receptive because of the fact that I told them it would be something of an interview with not just him by himself, but I had Reverend Pettigrew, who was just coming into the city at the time. And it was one of those deals where they could ask each other questions, and it made it quite interesting for both parties. And the listening audience, I perceive as being just as concerned.
Right. Then are those interviews still around? Do you have them?
I doubt if they are, because they would tape them, and after a certain period of time they would bulk the tape and it's all gone.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be very, very interesting.
Yes. At the time I had no idea that anything, would be something we could use in the archives.
Right. So you then were around during the period when Richard Arrington became city council.
Yes, I was.
As well as when he became mayor, of course. What was that like, working in a white establishment, and it appeared that blacks now, in quote, are taking over the city? Did that have any impact upon what was happening in your particular job?
If it did, the personnel there at the station didn't make it known, or they didn't show it. They didn't make any changes as far as the way they would carry themselves or conduct themselves in my presence.
Tell me then, how then do you view the changes over time in Birmingham from when you first came back to teach at council to present? How do you view these changes, and if the changes are significant, how significant do you see the changes?
I think they're quite significant because they open doors that would not have been opened otherwise, and many people have reached certain heights that they would not have attained had it not been for the movement. But it also had some effect on the progress that could have been made because of people becoming complacent. I found an air of complacency in many areas where people had made certain advancements as far as buying homes and moving out into other areas where they couldn't move beforehand, and things that they had acquired, it, quote, went to their heads, and they forgot that there was still some work to be done, and there were other people who needed their assistance. And some of that is still being felt today. Many people say they don't want to get involved. That's a cliche that we hear and see so many times. And to some degree, that has hurt us more than it has helped us. Integration, I'm referring to, because many people became complacent when they didn't have to. They forgot that we are still black and we will remain black, and there are certain instances that occur that remind us that we are still black. And we have forgotten to keep that in mind and try to direct ourselves along those paths, that we know who we are, and we've got to still make progress as much as possible and look out for the people who are behind us coming on after us.
How could integration, how could it have been made to be different, the transition from a segregated society to an integrated society? Many are saying, just as you just stated, that it appeared that we did not gain an awful lot. In fact, we lost some things. How could that transition have been made different?
If we had remembered our identity and conducted ourselves thusly, because if we look very closely, and if you do like some of the things I did while working outside of the South, you can see where the people are friendly to a degree. They let you know how they feel, and they conduct themselves in a different manner when they leave the workplace. And they will invite you to so many of their affairs where it's normally all white. You'll still find the tokens existing. But once we realize that this is what's still happening and start doing something about it, then we can't say that we're one of those who might be classified as one of complacency.
Are you suggesting that we had developed certain institutions, and then with integration we become a part of other people's institutions?
Yes, and we forget where we are and who we are, what we're all about.
So then I guess that suggests then that black folk basically were in favor of integrating, but the white society really was not accepting of integrations on an equal basis.
Correct.
So
they were forced to accept it. They didn't do it from their hearts, and it shows. If one is quite concerned about where he is and what's going on around him, he can see it and he'll feel it, because the real warmth isn't there. Yeah. It's a cover-up in other places, more really so than in the South, because you will know more readily here in the South than you will in some of the northern, the east and western areas.
Well, race relations, or the movement is concerned, are there any areas that we have not touched base on that you would like to just talk about? Anything that we have not covered that would be revealing to our audience in relationship to your own personal encounters in being a citizen of Birmingham?
Well, I think that everyone should take inventory and realize the fact that we're black, and look at what happens every day when you go to the workplace and you come right back home where our people are. And you should do something about where you are and help that community to become what you want it to be, and not move away from where the people are that you came along with, even though they have not reached certain plateaus with you. It's something that we can still do ourselves and not wait on somebody else or expect somebody else to do it for us and blame it on someone else when we don't succeed in whatever our goals might be. There's a whole lot of work that we can still do ourselves.